What's up? Welcome to 49ers Monday, presented by the Sleeper app. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Marco Martinez filling in for Ryan G. Hensley, who's been sick for a few weeks. Everyone reach out to Ryan, tell him he's being a punk. No, tell him that you wish him the best. He's not being
Man,
a
I'm filling
punk.
in for Ryan. That's kind of big shoes to fill right there, man.
Yeah. But you're gonna be great. Marco's always dialed in on the Niners and the draft. In addition, there's breaking news, though, before we get to the offseason and the combine. The 49ers are hiring KJ Wright as a defensive quality control coach. They were going to give this job to me, but I was like, you know what? I'm already doing a great job on my own. Why don't you go get KJ Wright? No, it wasn't my idea. I'm thinking Nick Sorensen brought him in. Nick Sorensen was with the Seahawks for about 8 years. He coached him kind of. He's a DB coach. What do you think of the Niners bringing in KJ Wright?
I think it's a smart hire. And like when you look at it, it's like he's never coached before, but linebackers have a tendency to understand the way offenses want to call plays against them, what they should be in. I think he's a good hire. He's the one who knows the system probably the best out of all the defensive coaches, outside of Daniel Bullock, probably. The other ones haven't been there that long. I'm interested to see how he does because he's the assistant linebackers coach, but quality control. Like you
Yeah.
normally see players come in as just a quality coaching staff, it's quality control, and then you start getting bumped up. And right away he said assistant linebackers coach. That's interesting because I don't think Johnny Holland needs assistance when it comes to coaching the linebackers. But I think it's just because he played linebacker, that's why he's getting that role. Interested to see how they actually utilize him.
Yeah, I'm looking at D'Amico Ryans because they brought him in as a defensive quality control coach in 2017, the Niners. That was his only job. And then in 2018, he became inside linebackers coach. 2021, he became the defensive coordinator. So seems like KJ Wright's on a similar trajectory, perhaps, or starting at a similar spot. I'm not saying he's going to be the Niners defensive coordinator in 3 years, but I'm not saying he won't either. And like you said, the linebacker spot is a great, preparation. That's not the right word for being a defensive coordinator because you're involved in pressure schemes, you're involved in run fits, and you're involved in coverage. So you're pretty much involved in a little bit of everything on defense. And look, it worked with D'Amico. Jim Harbaugh just brought down Navarro Bowman to be the linebacker coach with the Chargers. It seems like a smart thing to do, and it seems like people who've worked with KJ Wright think he's a really smart guy.
And I think when you look at it too, like Nick Sorensen, the issue with Steve Wilkes, right, was he couldn't pair the front four and the front seven with the back end, right? And Kyle mentioned that, John Lynch mentioned that multiple times. They're like, when your D line is doing stuff and your back end is doing something else, it's never gonna work. You have to marry them together. Well, KJ Wright played that linebacker role, so he could help make that a good marriage in the sense of Nick Sorensen is a safeties coach, defensive back guy, where front seven comes from KJ Wright kind of thing. Like, hey, let me have more input on this. This is how us linebackers in this system want to have things going. I think it's a good voice to have as a linebacker who's been in the system rather than just hiring a defensive coach who could coach the linebackers. It gives you more intel on how Fred's thinking when he's on the field. Obviously, Nick Sorensen isn't talking to Fred the entire play. So KJ Wright could be that voice for Fred on the sideline to Nick Sorensen.
Also, KJ Wright is linked to Saleh. Saleh was with the Seahawks back when KJ Wright was there. It's interesting how Kyle Shanahan keeps kind of coming back to the Seattle Seahawks roots for this defense. They evolved away from it a little bit with that wide nine, but still, that's what they want to be. A zone defense, essentially. And it seems like the linebackers coverage and zone is really freaking important for this whole thing to work.
Yeah, it's interesting because you would think Kyle Shanahan would want to go away from that scheme, the defensive.
Seattle went away from it.
Like Kyle lights it up every time he plays it.
Exactly.
He lights it up. But then every team in the league's running Kyle's system at some form of Kyle's system, but he still wants that to be his defense. Like that doesn't make sense. Like if you're lighting that defense up, that means it's what? Not a good scheme.
I would agree. That being said, you hire who you know. Nick Sorensen knows KJ Wright. And look what Robert Saleh, he brought in Jeff Ulbrich, another linebacker. So it seems like it could work.
You know what I thought was interesting, Grant, is Jeff Ulbrich, there was a report that he wanted to become the Niners DC.
Really?
So it's like, yeah, like the report came out and it was like, yeah, he wanted to be the Niners DC. They were really interested in him. but there was no way New York was going to let him leave. I thought that was very interesting because, like, okay, well, you wanted that guy to be your 1A. He was obviously their 1A. We don't know who 1B was, if there was a 1B. So
they wanted Spagnuolo. That would have been a coup.
That would have been a great hire. So
yep.
Is this a 1-year deal for Sorensen and this group? Because if they don't put up what they can, I believe New York is in their 4th year there. They might get fired. You might have a new defensive coordinator. That's interesting to me. I thought that was a very interesting nugget I got from that report.
Yeah, let's delve into that a little bit deeper a little later. That's a great call. I'm with you on that. Slick Niner says, who is Adam Peters' replacement? They promoted Tariq Ahmad to director of college scouting. No, from director of college scouting to director of player personnel, and they promoted RJ Gillen to director of player personnel as well. Do you know about these guys?
2 good scouts from what I've kind of watched them. They've been scouts from their whole upbringing, unlike John Lynch, where you come in as a player and you go straight to GM. I think that's the way to do it. If you're gonna, for example, Adam Peters, I think why Adam Peters is so successful was he learned how to scout. He learned how to do all the dirty work for general managers. People don't realize how much scouts and player personnel do for the organization.
Right.
They pretty much are the backbone. They do all the hard work. So excited to see them get their opportunity. Absolutely. Yeah. Excited to see them get their opportunity. But
cool. Good question. Moving on. All right. Steve Wilks out. Nick Sorensen promoted from pass game coordinator to defensive coordinator. Brandon Staley added just in case as assistant head coach, presumably, and now KJ Wright in the building as defensive quality control assistant. Has the defensive coaching staff improved?
I don't think so. When you look at it, Nick Sorensen, same situation as Steve Wilks, essentially. Now, the only difference is he does know the defense because he's been here for a little while. But essentially, you have a defensive coordinator who has never called plays, and that's why they brought Brandon Staley in. They brought him in to be, hey, you're not calling the right stuff. Let's call cloud coverage to disguise looks, you know? So
you're not okay, touche.
But no, but I think essentially it's a weird situation to be in for the 49ers because essentially I see it as another 1-year opportunity for Nick Sorensen to prove himself. Steve Wilks essentially would have been a better keep in the sense of he now understands his defense, understands how to call things, what to fix. And I thought the Niners did him wrong in a sense because now we're in a similar situation. I don't think they got better. Brandon Staley, if you look at what he's done, good defensive coordinator when he was with the Rams. His defense with the Chargers was absolutely terrible. Now, the Rams also had a defensive coordinator vacancy. They decided not to go back to Brandon Staley.
Correct.
Why is that?
That's a great point.
That's where I'm like, if we're going to hire a defensive coordinator, I get going Nick Sorensen because it's an in-house hire. But for me, I felt like there was other defensive coordinator opportunities that you had. You interviewed Merritt from the Spagnuolo tree. I thought that would have been a much better hire. Similar situation. He's been around good defenses. With the New York Giants, he took down Brady, beat the Niners a few times. So for me, I definitely would have gone another route. I don't think they got better. I think they're around the same, if not a little bit worse.
Here's my question. If Nick Sorensen is a better play caller than Steve Wilks, then why didn't they make that change mid-season?
Why didn't they make it last season?
Yeah, like you had Sorensen. You could have made him the defensive coordinator last year, and you were clearly unhappy with Steve Wilks at the bye week. Sorensen was there. You could have made the change. So now we're supposed to think that this is an upgrade. Sorensen's a better play caller now, but not a month ago. And so I don't see what's changed there. So like the real addition here that makes this a clincher is Staley, Brandon Staley. And is he really a better coach than Steve Wilks? I don't know.
Well, I do know that Nick Bosa's brother, Joey Bosa, was kind of frustrated with that scheme to start, right? Like he came out and made public comments about the Brandon Staley defense, and he explained how it's frustrating because he just wants to get after the quarterback. He didn't really want to have to drop, and he had him dropping. So that was kind of interesting for me. Like when I did see a lot of people wanting Staley, it's just if Nick Bosa, your best defensive player, his brother didn't care for that system at the start, what makes me think Nick Bosa is going to care for him coming in and wanting to add his form of his defense to the Niners defense? To me, it just doesn't make much sense. I do think Nick Sorensen probably should change things up, go away from the cover 3, go away from the wide 9. It's not great against the run. Teams are starting to run the ball against the
Yeah.
Niners defense, and to me, it's more so not necessarily personnel in terms of defensive coaching. I think it's the scheme. The scheme
Yeah.
isn't that great anymore.
I completely agree. So you go to wide 9 and you're pretty much saying we'll sacrifice a little run defense because it's a passing league, but we're going to supercharge our pass rush. Pass rush wasn't even that good last year. So what advantage is the wide 9 even giving you anymore? You could say it's a personnel issue. Maybe it is. Maybe they need another defensive end, but still it seems like teams know exactly how to attack the wide 9 these days. Nothing's changed with this defense in like 5 years.
Well, if you look at the Niners in 2019 when they went to the Super Bowl, they had guys like DeForest Buckner, DJ Jones was on the team. Like, so you could go with the wide 9 because you got big bodies who could stop the run inside.
Yeah.
But now when you don't have those guys, you have Hargrave, who has never been a good run defender. You have Armstead, who's not on the field
half the
because of
time.
injuries. So it's like you don't have the personnel to do it.
Yeah.
And but the NFL is going away from the big body defensive lineman into an athletic passing game because that's what the NFL is. You got to adapt to what the NFL does. And I think the Niners defense is not adapting to what the NFL wants to do.
Well, you mentioned in the last segment that it's possible the Niners aren't really committed long-term to this arrangement of Brandon Staley and Nick Sorensen, which is clumsy and kind of awkward and unlike things we see around the league. We just saw them fire Steve Wilks after 1 year. We know Robert Saleh could be available next year. Do you think that this was sort of like a plan B, C, D arrangement and they have eyes somewhere else already?
I do. Because if you look at normally defensive coordinators, assistant coaches, they get a 4-year deal. Normally they don't get the full whatever the head coach is. Like I know Robert Saleh signed a 5-year deal, but I think he's in his last year. He's in the hot seat. And then I think it's burning because if they don't do something with Rodgers, I think he's gone.
Yeah, how many coaches get to miss the playoffs their first 4 years of their tenure and keep their job? I don't think very many, if any.
Even if he makes the playoffs and they don't make a big run, like you traded a lot for Rodgers, you put your entire investment into Rodgers instead of getting a young quarterback, and that's why they've been rumored around a young quarterback. They've been rumored around JJ McCarthy, so that kind of tells me that the New York brass is thinking, you know what, maybe Robert Saleh's last year, and we can move forward with a younger coach, with a young quarterback. So for me, I think it's definitely a 1-year deal for the Niners defensive coaching staff because if Robert Saleh or Jeff Ulbrich is out there, those are two of Kyle's number ones for the defense. I think Kyle would go hire them out and replace Nick Sorensen. Even if Sorensen has a good year, I think he just feels a lot more confident going with a Robert Saleh or a Jeff Ulbrich. And I think Ulbrich wants to come back. He's a former Niner, played the linebacker with the Niners. So
yeah, it seemed like Kyle Shanahan, the Niners just created the precedent that they could fire Nick Sorensen no matter what. I mean, they just finished third in points allowed. They just gave up 17.5 points per game, and Wilks got fired. So if he gives up 17.6 points per game, he could get fired. Apparently, that's not good enough around here, especially if someone else is available. So, Nick, good luck. You better have the best defense in the league this year.
Or take the ball away as many times as you can, because I know he had Nick Sorensen. Was it Nick Sorensen who had I don't know if could be a different person, but apparently he had like meetings with the defense and they would take the ball away meetings kind of thing. I don't know. That's what I heard.
So he's got the magic touch. He knows where the ball's going before it goes there. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Mike Evans today signed a 2-year, $52 million contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's $26 million a year. He's worth it. He's second team All-Pro. Good for Mike Evans, future Hall of Famer. Going to be 31 next year. Another second team All-Pro wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk, 25 years old. Did his price just go up? What do we learn about what Brandon's going to command on the market?
So just to go back to the Sorensen, so he had the ball father meetings for takeaways and giveaways. So he was running the ball father.
The ball father. Okay.
But I definitely think Brandon Ayuk's number just went up. When you look at Mike Evans, he's an aging receiver, right? It's only a 2-year deal. He's a Hall of Fame player. Now the market gets set right now. Tampa Bay did a great job of getting it done now because what happens is you set that market. Every player that gets signed next wants more. They're just going to keep stockpiling. And now you have guys like I believe Justin Jefferson needs to be signed. I believe CD Lamb, possibly. I could be wrong on his contract, but Justin Jefferson is going to be the last person to sign.
Yeah.
Now, if you're the Niners, you want to get Brandon Ayuk signed before free agency starts. Why? Any receiver that gets signed on free agency is going to get overpaid. So
this market's going to get stupid.
Outrageous.
Stupid.
Unless teams may view it in the sense of, because I know it's a draft show too a little bit, teams may view the receiver in the draft a lot higher, so it may drop the market for receivers that are free agents. So I think that could benefit the Niners in a sense, because you're not going to see people extend or re-sign players for outrageous numbers. Like, you know what, you could walk. I'll go get a rookie. So for me, I think that's the most interesting thing is how do the Niners truly view Brandon Ayuk? Do they view him as that superstar, or do they view him like a DeForest Buckner in the sense of a super high caliber player, but I know this draft class has a player I could replace you with. I think that's what concerns me the most.
Absolutely. And it's like if his price tag is $27 million, $28 million a year, it's like, whew, that's franchise quarterback money almost. And it's like, do you even really throw it to him enough to justify that? That's the thing. It seems like with the Niners, they like Brandon Ayuk a lot, but they don't like him enough to give him 150 targets a year. And if all they want out of that split end X position is 6-7 targets a game, then maybe they should trade Brandon Ayuk and get a guy in the draft. I mean, better not miss, because Brandon Ayuk's really, really good at everything. But, I mean, Vikings did it, right? They traded Stephon Diggs, drafted Justin Jefferson. It all worked out.
I also think it's bad if you don't sign Brandon Ayuk for your culture. Like, to be honest with you, like he's the ultimate player in the sense of Kyle Shanahan threw him in the doghouse year one. Year two does everything Kyle wants to do. Turns into an all-pro level player. Like, that's what you truly want your players to do. Like, when their adversity hits, how do you respond? Ayuk to
and you can hold him up as an example to every player after. Like, look, if I'm tough on you, don't worry. Look what happened to Brandon Ayuk. I was tough on him.
Absolutely. And if you trade someone like that, it's like, what was the purpose of you treating him that way?
Yeah.
So for me, I think you kind of have to bring him back. I definitely think he's the caliber player. I think he should be hitting 130 targets a year. So if you look at it, I know last time we was on your show, I was talking about the Niners passing attack down the field. Brandon Ayuk, record setting year for him. I would personally feature Brandon Ayuk as your number one, George Kittle as your number two down the field. Number three, I would probably go Jawan Jennings, and then 4 Deebo. So when it comes to that as your true receiver one, you definitely got to resign Brandon Ayuk in the Super Bowl. If they use Brandon Ayuk as their receiver one against man, they probably win.
Yeah, I agree. What's interesting though is what Dave Merritt said about Brandon Ayuk. They had a little contempt for him. Ayuk's a really good player, but he's the youngest of the Niners' weapons, and he's a little bit of a hothead, which is cool a lot of the time. I mean, he blocks hard. He's tough. He goes over the middle. Dave Merritt said all he wanted to do in that game was fight. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but it's a funny thing for the winning team to say about a player. Like, you weren't really ready, buddy.
Well, it's also something that Kyle's kind of instilled in him, right? Like, Kyle is kind of, if you look at Jennings, Deebo, like their entire receivers, it's kind of a Kyle culture, right? Like you want them to block as hard as they can and kind of toe that line where you don't get flagged, but you get in their head, try to mentality. The same thing why we see George Kittle talk during plays.
Right.
Like, that's that Kyle Shanahan mentality or the culture that he's built, allowing his players to be who they are in a sense of it could be great for you or it could be bad in the sense of the team thinks it's funny. Like, oh, this guy's out of his mentality. He's wanting to fight everyone. Interesting thing, though.
It backfired on him. I think like in the regular season is cool because it looks like they're playing with joy and passion and intensity and all of that. But in the Super Bowl, it came across as lack of focus.
Yeah, very arrogant.
Yeah, and like before the Super Bowl, Brandon Ayuk put out a little video, I think on TikTok or Instagram or something, like how to really fight on the football field. It's like people aren't really trying to throw hands and and if you want, you got to go for the neck and yada yada yada. It's like, man, you should be not thinking about that. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, you think they were thinking about the right thing? Their coach was drunk.
Yeah,
at the media day.
Yeah,
so like,
allegedly, maybe, but yeah, it was a bad look.
So yeah, like you can look at the whole thing, like up to that Super Bowl. I mean, but I definitely
The whole
think
team needs to lock in.
the price for Brandon Ayuk definitely went up.
Had to.
But the question is, Grant, is if you're truly trying to build a team, right? Your offensive line is in a serious situation where your whole right side is bad.
Yeah.
I would include center in there as well. If you could get around pick 15 from the Colts, who do like trading for Niner players who are all pros, right? If you could get pick 15 and you could get an offensive tackle in this class with a very heavy offensive tackle class, and then take receiver at 31, it's kind of enticing in the sense of you look at Brock Purdy, right? If he's truly that quarterback, it doesn't matter if he loses Brandon Ayuk, in my opinion. Like if the Niners truly believe Brandon Ayuk or Brock Purdy is the franchise quarterback they think he is, Brandon Ayuk losing him should not matter in terms of winning games or winning a Super Bowl. You have George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. You would still have Deebo Samuel and a young rookie. So for me, it's looking at it as like, okay, well, you already have these great players on your roster. Purdy should be able to carry you with one less weapon to a
And you're
Super
going to
Bowl
draft
and
a
win it
wide
all.
receiver with pick 31 anyway. It's not like you're going to just be down a guy. You'll try to replace him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think Ayuk's worth in a trade?
Because you have to pay for him, I don't think he's worth the top 20 pick. Like teams are going to look at it like, okay, well, I have to turn around, I have to pay him. So why would I trade you a first rounder in a deep receiver class? I think
right. How much more do I like you than this wide receiver I could get at pick 25
for a fraction of the cost?
Exactly. I'd have to like you way more.
And that's interesting because teams do that. For example, for Stephon Diggs, when you're in a win now mode, right? You could do it if you have a rookie quarterback, right? If you don't want to wait for that rookie receiver or like a rookie contract quarterback, you don't want to wait for that rookie receiver to develop. Teams like the Texans, teams like the Colts, you could look at those teams and be like, hey, you know what? They have a young quarterback. They need a weapon to make him make that next jump. But I think he would get 2 seconds just because you have to overpay for him. Like you have to give him that big contract extension. It just doesn't make sense for a team to give up a first and a deep receiver class.
That's really interesting. So the topic started as how Mike Evans impacts Brandon Ayuk, but the real issue may be how this draft affects Brandon Ayuk. Like there may not be the trade market for him, and he may not be able to really get $27-28 million. Teams might opt for the draft instead. Interesting. All right, let's do some sleeper picks. Sleeper time. We got to talk basketball because we've been talking about football for 20 minutes. It's too much. So we got, just for people that like putting a little money down, making it interesting, we got a game this afternoon, Clippers and Bucks. Could be a little NBA Finals preview. Or not, but they're playing today. Marco, help me out. James Harden. What do you like for him? You can do whatever you want. Points and assists, points, rebounds and assists, just assists.
Is that 15 points? 15.5?
Yep.
I would go over because I think last night he had like 5 points. I'm pretty sure last night.
Let's see what he had. He had 4.
Yeah, so I would go over just because he's playing against Doc Rivers, and there's a little beef there. He just came off a bad night. He's gonna bounce back and have more than 15.5 points.
I agree. Okay, Kawhi Leonard. What do you like for Kawhi?
Oh, Kawhi.
Kawhi.
What's his rebounds and assists?
Rebounds and assists. 10.5.
I like the over because he's gonna have to go rebound the ball against a long Milwaukee Bucks team. I like the over because he got to rebound the ball and dish it.
I like it. 10.5. I like it. Paul George. 19.5 points.
Paul George has been struggling. I don't know.
Has he?
Yeah.
15 points last game. He has been.
He's been struggling.
Yeah.
Against a really good Bucks team, this team has to step up. I'm not too sure. I don't think I would really touch Paul George because he's been struggling. He came off an injury, so I don't really know if I would touch him in terms of this one. But if I had to, I'd probably go over on the 20 on 19.5. I think this is a game where the Clippers have to prove something. It's one of those prove it games.
I'm touching it. Giannis 31.5 points, double prop bet, points, rebounds, and assists 50.5.
Jeez.
Rebounds, assists.
Double. I mean, I don't know. Like John.
It's a double. Let's see if he's hit it recently. Yup. Let's do it.
I mean, he averages a double. So
yeah. Malik Beasley. I don't know why Malik Beasley's the only other Bucks player you can wager on, but
That's
Malik
super
Beasley,
random.
super random points 4 last game, super random. Let's just bet against Malik Beasley because we bet. We put more for everyone else. Let's wager less. I don't like Malik Beasley at all. Boom, locking it in. Yeah, that's how you do it. You want to play? Use the QR code or the promo code Cohn COHN. Get that deposit match up to $500 on the Sleeper app. Dope. All right, let's get that, and then over here, and then boom. All right, back to football. We talked about potentially trading Brandon Ayuk. I don't really like the idea of trading Brandon Ayuk for the reasons you stated. It's such a Buckner move. He's improving. His best years are ahead of him. He deserves more targets. Deebo, on the other hand, I feel like the Niners got the best of Deebo. And he's still a good player, but not what he was 2 years ago. Not the running back he was 2 years ago. Not the route runner he was 2 years ago. And man, he's expensive. But trading him is complicated. Is it worth it? I mean, the sense that if you trade him now, I'm guessing you could get more for him than if you traded him next year. But if you trade him now, there also is this huge dead cap hit that comes along with it. What do you think?
It is an interesting thing because I didn't think they should have extended him when he wanted the extension. I thought they should have traded him, especially with the rumors around that the New York Jets wanted to give up pick 10. The Niners wanted their higher pick. For me, I definitely would trade Deebo. Now, I don't know if you do it now because it doesn't really help you in the sense of you want to be all in for the Super Bowl. And like the Niners keep saying, we're all in, we're all in. Being all in, you technically keep Deebo, right? You pay the big salary. But like you just said, like if you want something in return, you got to do it now because next year he's going to be 29, 30.
Yeah.
He's going to be 29. Yeah. So it's like you're kind of on the downrise or downfall of your career in terms of a running back who plays receiver and likes to run everyone over, gets injured a lot. So you're definitely in a situation where if you want to capitalize on a draft class where receiver is extremely good, you want to extend Brandon Ayuk on a big contract, but get a younger receiver in return. I definitely think this would be the opportunity to trade Deebo now. I'm not a fan of trading him post June 1st just to save money and use that capital for next year. It doesn't help you now.
No, that's a good point. If you're going to trade Deebo, you need to do it nowish and get something in the draft or trade him for another player. I don't know how you want to do it, but I'm kind of into it. I feel like if you trade him now, you might be able to get someone good at another position, a draft pick that you could use on a tight end or an offensive lineman or whatever. I don't think the Niners need Deebo Samuel anymore. Like, he's great if you get the ball in his hands, but it's getting harder and harder to do that. You throw him some screens, 3 or 4 screens a game. He might take one to the house, but other than that, how is he getting open if they play man-to-man coverage? If it's a good defense, it's tough.
For me, I definitely like when you look at it, like if you could get a second or third rounder for him, I think you got to do it this year with such a deep class. You could get a guy like Malachi Corley, who essentially a lot of people are comparing him to Deebo in the sense of his run after the catch ability. I think he's a much better route runner. So you could look at that, or you could go a guy like Ricky Pearsall, who is really, really probably one of the better route runners in this draft class. He's could catch in traffic. One of those guys where you want on your team in the sense of he has that dog mentality. Just both those guys have that dog mentality like Deebo Samuel does. So if you do want to upgrade, not necessarily upgrade, but get a young receiver in this draft class after trading Deebo, you could. It just, for me, like you got to eat 20 plus million in dead cap. So for me, it's kind of interesting in the sense of you don't like paying a player to play for another team. And I know the Niners don't want to do that. But if I had to, and I was the one making the executive decision on should we trade Deebo now or later, I'm doing it now, especially in a super deep receiver class. Give me a young receiver that's cheap to pair with Brandon Ayuk for a few years. You eat the money now, but you're going to get more capital now versus next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I would trade him now. Sorry. I think you could get. You said it yourself like a few minutes ago. What is the pecking order? What should the pecking order be in this passing game? Ayuk 1, Kittle 2. You said Jennings 3. You can't justify having Deebo Samuel 4th in targets while having a $28 million cap hit. Can't. and he should be that. So it seems like if you keep him on the team at this number, you have to force him the ball over and over and over again, and that's not the best thing for the team.
And I think when I say fourth in the pecking order, I'm talking. So I want people to like take my words, and I know how YouTube works and stuff like that. I mean, down the field passing, right?
Oh, okay.
Because
Okay.
like down the field passing is when you're showing your route running ability or your ability as a true receiver. Now,
Sure.
I understand feeding Deebo the ball in on the quick screens and stuff like that, but it really doesn't help your offense. So I'm a firm believer where your offense could become much more dynamic if you are in a, for example, I'm not a big fan of running the 21 personnel and stuff like that. If you go 11 personnel, you take juice off the field, you put another receiver, for example, Jennings. Same thing with Deebo. I essentially think he out there running routes. He's a running back. Like he's
Yeah.
he's not creating separation. It makes it a lot harder. So essentially, you add another receiver, your offense might become more dynamic and explosive down the field. Yeah, and it's already explosive. Imagine it being more explosive with the true route runner on the field, opposite of Brandon Ayuk with George Kittle taking a lot of attention too. So I think they should move Deebo as soon as they can.
Agree. James Omari, new member. Thank you very much. City Bert, how close were the Niners to getting Spags in 2019? Don't know. Probably not close because they had Salah. Daza says, also, if we move Deebo, it frees up more targets for Kittle and BA. That was my point. Aside from 2-3 good games a year, what does he do? Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's kind of harsh, but
I want to ask you a
I mean,
question,
he
Grant.
shouldn't be taking more targets than these two.
I want to ask you a question. Do you think it rubbed Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch the wrong way when he said he didn't want to be a Niner, and then he doubled down on it later in the offseason during his contract extension? It was like, I don't want to be there. Like, do you think that rubbed them the wrong way in the sense of they kind of felt like he doesn't like
Right.
their building?
Good point. He made that pretty clear. Like, I don't want to be there for whatever reason. All right, well, then you'll be the first person we trade when it's time to cut bait, and you won't finish your career.
I mean, there's a lot of teams that are like, for example, teams I think of when I'm thinking of Deebo trade are like teams that truly need a receiver. Carolina Panthers, who they could force feed him as much as they want. They're super after. Everyone knows that Carolina's after a receiver.
Yep.
If you get a third from Carolina, and it's a late second. Like it's very intriguing.
Yeah, they could afford him too. Citybird got you. All right, moving on. Here's another trade the Niners could make. According to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, the Jets would be interested in trading Zach Wilson for a 6th or a 7th round pick. Any team that trades for him would have to also pick up his contract, would be like $4 or $5 million. And Jeremy Fowler listed the Niners and Rams as teams that would make sense. What do you think? Should the Niners trade a very late round pick for Zach Wilson?
When you have 11 picks and you need a backup quarterback, the Niners essentially paid, was it Sam Darnold's $5 million in contract?
About the same. About the
It
same.
was about the same. I think Kyle preferred Zach Wilson over other quarterbacks in that draft class. I think that's why he ended up pivoting towards Trey Lance. I don't think everyone likes to say Mac Jones is the guy. I think it was really Zach Wilson. He trains with Kyle's really good friend John Beck, so Kyle knows inside on Zach Wilson. I definitely think Zach Wilson would be much better in this offense with weapons. I think he could put up similar numbers to the Niners quarterbacks we've had in the past, including Brock Purdy with these weapons. We also got to look at New York Jets.
Similar skill set.
What was that?
Similar skill set, similar build.
Absolutely. When you look at the Jets offense, they have not done they never did Zach Wilson any favors. They truly didn't. Obviously, drafting Garrett Wilson was actually one of them, but his offensive coaches were terrible. In my opinion,
LaFleur the younger and Hackett.
Yeah, that's never really catered to him. So if you're talking a 6th or 7th round pick and you need a backup quarterback, why not? Like, if you really need, for example, if Brock Purdy goes down, you at least could see what Zach Wilson is. I think he'd be a better option than signing a free agent to be your backup quarterback, better than Brandon Allen, in my opinion, because you at least have
Darnold.
I would personally keep Darnold. I think Darnold is better, but Darnold's probably going to get a little bit more because he showed some flashes. So you might see Darnold go to a team that actually needs a quarterback and get an opportunity to compete for a starting job.
Huh. Interesting. Well, how about this? How about Mac Jones? Is he available? What do you think he'd be worth? Cost.
I wouldn't touch Mac Jones.
Why?
To be honest with you, essentially you're not. I don't think Mac Jones has the arm talent. I don't think he has the
Foot talent.
ability, like the foot speed, anything. Like
he's not coachable.
He's
Other than
he's
that,
coachable.
He's great.
I don't know. I definitely wanted. I would if I had to choose between Zach Wilson and Mac Jones for a 6th or 7th round pick. I'm 100% taking Zach Wilson because of the arm talent, the mobility,
athleticism.
Yeah, like he has all the traits that Kyle was looking for. But the thing is, how developed is he? Did he really learn behind Rodgers? Like, is there any benefit that he got from any of that? So definitely would look at that aspect as well. Is obviously Kyle knows John Beck enough. So
it'd be something to watch. I think it would be a little arrogant on the Niners' part because are they good at developing quarterbacks, or they just luck out with Brock Purdy? Did Sam Darnold improve under them, or is he Sam Darnold still? I don't know. I'd like to see the Niners trade for Zach Wilson and take on this project.
I mean, because
what the Jets felt,
quarterbacks.
What the Jets felt is that Wilson couldn't hit the layups. Niners going to give him a lot of layups. Maybe the Jets are wrong.
That's actually a good point. I mean, the layups were more of the issue than anything else, and
that's what they felt.
But the thing is, though, those layups are coming with Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, not nobodies. You know what I mean? So it's a lot easier to throw to talent than it is to try to make talent.
I think this could happen. All right, let's talk more draft. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's supposed to be one hell of a year for offensive tackles in the draft. I think there's like 7 or 8 or 9 who are given first round grades or something close to it. Is this a good year for the Niners to draft an offensive tackle in round 1?
It's a phenomenal year. I have since November. So I start watching film super early because you can't watch film after the draft, like after the NFL season, and be caught up. So I start watching it. That's what you do.
That's what Kyle also tries to do, in my defense.
Absolutely.
That doesn't work.
So like I don't have enough time to watch all these players. So what I do is I turn it on start of the season and I start watching it usually around October, November time. I had 8 first round grades starting in November. I still have 8 first round grades. There's a couple of them that you could kind of like, okay, he's a fringe second rounder. For me, that's Jordan Morgan. Outside of that, some people have him in the first round. I don't. Definitely a super high caliber class when it comes to offensive tackles. I don't think it's the best offensive tackle class that people were making it seem, because that draft where Penny Sewell and all them were in it, Rashawn Slater, that class was deep. Like, and it was like high caliber players throughout that entire first round. For me, you see a lot of high end for grades, but then you also have people that are super excited over Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton, who they're projects. When you look at them, like for example, I know a lot of Niner fans want Amarius Mims because of his outstanding physical traits. 8 starts. Tyler Guyton, not many starts. Oof. My biggest question, so the Niners took a quarterback who had limited starts and they were hoping he developed. Do they make that same decision on an offensive tackle in a win now mode?
Right.
Or do they try to find someone who's already a little bit more developed? I don't see them going for upside. And that's why I don't think Amarius Mims and Tyler Guyton are guys that they truly have pinpointed on their...
McGlinchey certainly was not an upside pick.
Oh, absolutely not.
No. Be interesting. That's a good point. So do you think that they stick at 31 and take the best offensive tackle available? Or do you think they target a guy and trade up?
So the interesting thing is they could trade up to get the guy they want. I just don't think it makes sense, because I think there's going to be at 31, there's going to be a quality offensive tackle there. I think Kingsley Suamataia possibly is there. I know a lot of people were saying Troy Fautanu is probably going to drop in this draft class because people see a lot of teams view him as a guard, which I think he's a tackle through and through. Jordan Morgan is also an offensive tackle who team see. It's interesting because teams see Morgan as a tackle, but then they see Fautanu as a guard, but Fautanu has more length than Morgan. So to me, that's a little interesting in the sense of how teams view these players, because you're not going to have 8 go in the first 30 picks, in the sense of you have probably 4 quarterbacks going. People are saying there's going to be 10 receivers. Like I've seen multiple reports saying 10 receivers could possibly.
That's good news for the Niners.
Great news for the Niners.
Yeah.
So there's also interior offensive linemen. For example, like the Rams will probably go center. So I think there's going to be one there at 31. If not, I don't mind going best player available in that first round because a lot of teams they make you overpay to trade up into the first.
True.
You could get away with trading it back up into the second, super early into the second,
They get fair value.
And get fair value.
Yeah.
So
but if you're really hot and heavy about some player in the top 20, then we'll tax you.
Absolutely. And I don't think you should overpay for an offensive tackle, especially because this is so deep. I personally, if they're at 31 and there's a tackle there, I'm sure it's going to be one of a really good tackle. So, for example, I know a lot of people have Kingsley. People who scout and stuff like that have Kingsley a little bit going back into the first, early second. I think he's a top 3 offensive tackle in this class. I think Troy Fatanu is up there. Now, the issue for me is if the Niners don't love him, don't take him. Don't take a player just because he's an offensive tackle.
The best right tackle available, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not what you're supposed to do when you're drafting in the first round. Draft best player available. And then if you have to,
that's why I'd be okay with them trading up a few spots if it's not a whole lot, but a few spots if you really like the guy, because I mean, I don't think you can get interior offensive lineman here. You need an offensive tackle. It's tough to get those guys after round 1. It's a great opportunity to get a starter. There's probably a bunch of guys in this draft who are better than Mike McGlinchey right now. Get one of those guys.
Absolutely. Even, for example, you could go up and get – the reason why I don't mind them staying at 31 and just hoping someone falls is in the second round, you could trade back up and go get Roger Rosengarten. I think Roger Rosengarten is an extremely good player. Do you remember Blake Freeland, who a lot of 49er Twitter was in love with? Yeah, they were in love with him. Fascinated with him. I thought
they wanted Mike McGlinchey 2.0. They couldn't wait.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I thought he was a fourth, fifth rounder. I didn't think he was that good. This kid, Roger Rosengarten, has the athletic profile of Blake Freeland, but a much better in pass pro.
Good
in the run game, not as strong. But I don't really, as long as you could pass protect. That's what I'm looking for. If you could pass protect and make sure Brock Purdy is standing upright. I know you retweeted a EPA number was I think it was a point
EPA per attempt. He led the league when he had time to throw. Led the league.
So rule number 1 is if it's a quarterback-driven league.
Yeah, to me, this whole building around your running game, it's something you do when you don't have the quarterback you want. It's look, we don't really trust this guy, and guys could be wide open. He's still gonna mess it up. So we're gonna really give him the best running game possible. You don't need to spend $7 million on fullback, $14 million on running back, $28 million on a wide back. That's so much money when all this dude needs is time to throw and guys who get open. I'm not saying he's a great quarterback, but damn.
They should definitely 100%. It's all, if you're all in, either in free agency, draft, you're looking to upgrade on the offensive line at some point. You have to. You can't sit there and tell yourself for multiple years. Even with the year they lost with Jimmy Garoppolo, that you have a good enough offensive line. Don't lie to yourself.
Don't lie to yourself. All right, give me one move the Niners should make in free agency.
I think they should sign an edge rusher. I don't know. When you look at the edge rushers, so I know a lot of people get fascinated with these big signings, right? That's not how you win championships. You don't win championships by signing the big name player,
the most expensive dude on the market.
Yeah, it's not how you win. You get the guy that complements your defense. For example, they need someone.
Samson Ebukam.
Exactly. That'll help them more than re-signing. For example, Chase Young. I know they mentioned about re-signing him. I wouldn't mind it if at the right price, but I'm not going to overpay him just because he's an edge rusher. I would do that one though. Guys that have taken less than they normally would get. Yannick Ngakoue, who I really like off the edge.
Good player.
You could probably get him cheaper than
Chase
Young, Leonard Floyd.
Look at all the production the Ravens got from Jadeveon Clowney last year. I think you can do well getting vets. I know the Niners tried with Randy Gregory, but I think you could get someone a little bit better.
Absolutely, you could. And the thing is, if you have the Niners love to talk about how great Chris Kasarik is and how great of a defensive line coach he is. Well, go get someone that has potential, who is a good player in the NFL. He doesn't have to be great. Get someone who's been really good, who you could get production out of. You don't have to go overspend on the D line. Your defensive line has $80 million invested into it.
So they shouldn't go get Brian Burns?
No, they shouldn't. They should not. That's to me like I don't get that. Like you're gonna
Overkill.
give up. I see a lot of people saying like, "Oh, go get them," right? You're gonna give up multiple first rounders, a second rounder. Now you're
Yeah.
back in a situation where we've been
Right.
talking about when we traded for Trey Lance
Yeah.
with no draft picks, too expensive of a roster. Just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. He's not the missing piece. He's not.
No. Do they think he's a missing piece though? I mean, they've been looking for that DN to complement Bosa forever.
I mean, if you're truly trying to go find someone who could complement Bosa and you don't want to overspend, defensive end Brian Huff from the Jets, who
Okay.
probably will see a good payday.
Okay.
Dante Fowler off the outside, who's been solid for Dallas. Rasheem Green,
Okay.
he was solid with Chicago. Wasn't nothing crazy. I'm just looking at it. You have to you can't truly go and overspend. Josh Uch from New England, who could get
Okay.
after the quarterback.
There's options.
Always
Always options.
Like there's the defensive end. Like for
Yeah.
example, Uch he's a season away. So last year he had 3 sacks. 2022 he had 11 and a half. Like
Okay.
there's production out there where you
Yeah.
truly don't have to go get the highest paid defensive end, or if they want, go get a corner, go get someone who could truly play in the nickel and put Deebo back outside.
What about linebacker?
No, if you so what was so from when I see people like, oh, maybe we should bring Aziz in. Doesn't make sense. Why'd you just draft 2 linebackers in the last draft class to go overpay for a linebacker when hopefully Dre Greenlaw is back by mid-year?
Yeah, and hopefully D Winters and or Jalen Graham is good. You drafted both of them.
I mean,
yeah. So don't sign a linebacker. Okay. Corner you mentioned. Anything else I'm missing? Oh, D tackle.
They have to. Either if you bring someone back on, you need to re-sign someone when you only have 5 or 6 defensive linemen signed on your roster. You kind of have to, but it just makes it so hard to actually invest in a defensive tackle position, only because you're already paying Armstead, you're already paying Hargrave. Like, how do you
gotta draft one?
You have to, because you can't make the signing.
You probably can't even afford Kinlaw.
No, you can't. $5 million.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So,
and frankly, you need someone who a little bit, because Kinlaw is good, I feel like, in bursts. But if you need someone to start in place of Eric Armstead, which they do half the time, I don't know if that's Kinlaw.
I don't think so either. I think you got to go actually get a defensive tackle in this draft class. There's a good. It's just this defensive tackle class is better towards the mid to end of the draft rather than in the top end. So you could definitely go get someone. But when you're looking at it, I'm not paying $45 million, because you're going to have to pay someone $5 million at least $5 million open market for 3 defensive tackles. Does not make sense roster building wise.
What about Sebastian Joseph Day? Him and Staley got along, right?
I believe. I thought they didn't like each other.
Yeah, didn't they release him? Waive him
mid-season?
Yeah.
I mean, so who would you sign though? Because I know it's not just me. I want to know who would you.
Those
sign?
Are good. Those were good ones. I had one on offense. I think they should sign Logan Thomas. I like bringing in a second tight end, and Dalton Schultz is too expensive, and I don't know that much about the draft class. I've heard it's kind of thin at tight end. So go get Logan Thomas. Give him a 1-year deal. He's 33 years old. I mean, 55 catches last year. He's a good player.
So you don't think Cameron Latu or Braden Willis are great picks?
Absolutely not. My opinion on Cameron Latu is that he's not fast enough or quick enough, and his hands are awful. His hand-eye coordination. Willis, I mean, I don't know. He's fine. Dwelly, I always liked Dwelly, but enough. And Charlie Warner, they don't use him.
It's funny because you mentioned Charlie Warner. I thought that's exactly who Cameron Latu is very similar to. They took him in the 3rd round, but then Charlie Warner, they had a super late grade on him. I was like, come on.
Yeah. What do you think of Latu?
I don't think he's good at all. I didn't think he was good when they drafted him. This draft,
I'm not sure he even makes a team this year. Sorry.
He shouldn't. If we're being honest, he shouldn't. But they're probably going to keep him because they want to make themselves feel better about themselves.
Right. About their draft resume, whatever. Yeah, I like Logan Thomas. I mean, I think he fits in there. They'd probably get him $4 or $5 million or less, 1-year deal, incentivized, kind of like when they brought in Jordan Reed.
That would be an interesting one. And then you go ahead and draft someone later in the draft.
Sure.
Someone like Eric All, who from Iowa. He's a good blocker, good receiver. His only issue is he's had ACL injury in the past, so injuries have been a little bit of an issue. But
it really seems like ACL injuries are less and less of an issue these days. It seems like Trent Baalke was a little ahead of his time on that one.
He was.
He was a decade too soon on that train. We all apologize, man. But shout out to Trent Baalke.
That's hilarious. Everyone wants the torn ACL guy who has super high upside you could get in the second round rather than the first round, huh?
Trendsetter.
Hey.
Marty Doberman says, take less money if they want to win, build team, and be great. Okay. Do you think Brandon Ayuk's going to give the Niners a discount?
Absolutely not. But the thing is, though, is so the only position I think you can make the argument for in terms of take less money is quarterback.
Yeah.
That's if literally all you got to say
because you could take less money and still wind up with $39 million a year.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous money. You can look at look what Brady did. He has 7 championships.
Yep.
Took less every year to build an offensive line.
Yeah, and he still got the money back because he transcends the sport. City Burt, who does cap increase help more, SF or KC?
Kansas City, because now they're able to actually keep both of their star players. They could keep L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones rather than it was probably going to be one. So definitely Kansas City. The Niners, it didn't really help. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, well, the cap goes up. That means we could sign players and we could keep everyone." No, cap going up just means all these contracts go up. Really didn't make sense.
Yeah, Ayuk just got more money. It's not like you got another player. City Bird says your prediction on ticket price increases. Oh, I don't even know. I'm a sports
absolutely
tracker. Big time. Yeah. Dazza says, wasn't Kalia Davis supposed to be good? What happened with him? Armstead also needs to take a pay cut.
Kalia Davis's injuries. I think he's a good player. Just injuries, that knee. Again, ACL guy, right? You're betting on that ACL actually truly becoming good. The Niners had a higher grade on him, but it was because of the ACL that they were able to get him later. You're just hoping that knee heals how it's supposed to heal. Not everyone heals the same, and sometimes they start developing that arthritis at a very young age.
True. Also, it's different high-level professional athletes rehabilitating from an ACL tear. There's a difference in that and college athletes. You don't really know. I'm just saying, right?
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's the show. It was a good one. Marco, you were phenomenal, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll see you guys when you least